I'm assuming that most of you guys that watched today's video ended up watching Minnesota-Ohio State last night. This was arguably the best game on last night. This game was a lot of fun to watch, and Minnesota really put up a good fight. The star of the night was Mohamed Ibrahim, as he just went off for the Gophers and really kept them in that game and also gave them the momentum to actually take the lead in the second quarter. He had that big run on 4th and 1 and was on pace to have a career night. He had 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, and his night was not over yet, as in the most crucial time of the game, we had the worst news possible. On a play where he was trying to juke out an Ohio State defender, it looked like he tore his Achilles, and that has been confirmed. And if that's the case, Mohamed Ibrahim's college football career could potentially be over. He passed up on the NFL draft after last year to come back and try to have a bigger 2021 season, and that decision is going to bite him badly, and it's just so incredibly unfortunate. Since the title of this video and the beginning has been somewhat negative, but he has been a great player for the Gophers the last 3 years, has a great story, and I think if he recovers from this, he will have a future in the NFL, so we're going to tell his story. But right before we get into that, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed for this upcoming college football season, and you're not going to want to miss out on the constant content I have coming up for you guys. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you want to support my work, and check out my 2021 college football playlist for everything that has to do with this season, and you're not going to regret it. Now let's get started and talk about Mohamed Ibrahim. In order to understand why his career may be over, we need to go back in time and see how Mohamed Ibrahim became a big-time player to begin with. Let's go back in time and see what he was like before the injury happened. He grew up in the Baltimore area and always loved the game of football. His high school coach knew Mohamed was going to be a special player back in 7th grade and called him a jitterbug who had a bright future. When he got to Our Lady of Good Counsel High School, he had pretty big shoes to fill in terms of being a skill player, as that was the same high school that Stephon Diggs went to back in the day. He eventually took the field in the undersized back and put up good season after good season. He was definitely going to be good enough to play Power 5 football and would eventually choose to go across the country to Minneapolis to play for the Golden Gophers. He ended up holding offers from Kentucky, Iowa, and Temple, but chose Coach Fleck, and he had this to say about it. Quote, "Having Coach Fleck there and the relationship we have, we're going to keep building on it. I feel like he's a player's person. I connected to him as soon as we started talking. That was a big thing, having that family environment." Ibrahim ended up rushing for over 1,300 yards and 16 touchdowns as a senior and established himself as one of the top players in the state. His high school coach said Mo was always underrated, and he does give a lot of credit to Coach Fleck, saying, quote, "Mo hits the hole, and he has sheer will about him. He wasn't highly recruited, but Coach Fleck saw something in him that a lot of people didn't, and I applaud him for that." That ended up showing on the recruiting sites, as according to 24/7 Sports, Ibrahim was a 3-star recruit, the number 62 running back, and the 1,125th best player in the class of 2017. There was a lot of depth ahead of him at Minnesota, but that did not stop him from anything. Ibrahim would arrive in the first year under PJ Fleck, and he would not play. The Gophers ended up going 5-7 in Fleck's first year, but he would play a role going into 2018. Guys like Rodney Smith and Shannon Brooks were ahead of him, but after injury, Ibrahim would get his opportunity to play, and when he did, he was spectacular. As a redshirt freshman, he played in 10 games, starting 9 of them. He ran for 1,160 yards, which was the second most by a Gopher freshman in school history. He also had 9 touchdowns to go along with that, and he set a single-game record of 224 yards as a freshman against Georgia Tech, and he was the MVP of the Quick Lane Bowl. In 2018, the Gophers did start out a little bit shaky, but they reeled off some late-season wins and had some momentum and ended up making a bowl game where they did beat the Yellow Jackets. Ibrahim was not expected to play that well, and he had this to say about it. Quote, "It was pretty cool just because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Going into that year, I was 3rd or 4th string, not knowing if I was going to play at all. Then injuries happened and things happened, and it was my time to play, and my time to uphold the running back standard. So I felt like I couldn't let down the running backs. I had to live up to that role." He obviously had a monster freshman year and established himself as one of the top backs in the Big Ten and someone to watch out for. But he would have a major setback during one of his first few seasons as a Gopher. One of his best friends would tragically pass away, and it hit him like a truck. Ibrahim said, quote, "He was everything to me. He was like my best friend, like my brother. We hung out ever since 3rd grade, so it was kind of hard for me, but I got through it." We saw Ibrahim's numbers go down a little bit in 2019, but Minnesota had one of their best seasons in school history. Led by Tanner Morgan at quarterback, the Gophers got off to a quick start. While they did have scares in their first 3 games against South Dakota State, Fresno State, and Georgia Southern, they were in better hands when they opened up Big Ten play. They were beating Purdue pretty badly, and the Gophers held off a Boilermaker comeback, and they started out 4-0. From there, they easily beat Illinois, took care of Nebraska, went on the road and beat Rutgers, and destroyed Maryland at home. All of a sudden, this team was 8-0, ranked inside the top 15, and they had a humongous matchup at home against number 4 Penn State. In what was one of the greatest games of the 2019 season, Rashad Bateman played spectacular, the defense played great, and the home crowd came to life as they knocked off the number 4 Penn State Nittany Lions 31-26, and from there it was pandemonium for the program. They got up to number 8 the following week. They would lose a close game on the road against number 20 Iowa. They would rebound with a win over Northwestern, and if they somehow beat Wisconsin, they would get themselves in the Big Ten Championship, and who knows, maybe if they beat Ohio State, they would have been able to get into the playoff. Unfortunately, they got blown out by their arch rival, and they would finish the regular season at 10-2. They would, however, get placed in a pretty good bowl, and that is when Ibrahim had his best game of the year. In a win over number 12 Auburn, he'd go for 140 yards and a touchdown to finish off his 2019 campaign. Despite all the Gopher success, it wasn't as good of a year, as he only finished with 604 yards and 7 touchdowns. The Gophers had a lot of hype going into 2020 after their spectacular 2019 campaign. They began the year ranked number 21 in the country and opened up on a national stage against number 18 Michigan. They get blown out in that game, but Ibrahim had 140 yards and 2 touchdowns and looked like his normal self. From there, they go on the road the following week and lose an overtime game to Maryland, but Ibrahim went off as he had over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. It didn't stop there, as he broke that career high the following week against Illinois with 224 yards and 4 more touchdowns. The guy was playing like his life depended on it, and he finished the year spectacularly. He had over 100 yards against Iowa, 100 yards and 3 touchdowns in a win over Purdue, 100 yards and 2 scores in a win over Nebraska, and then in their overtime loss to Wisconsin, he went for 151 yards. Somehow, in only 7 games, Ibrahim ran the ball for over 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns and was a third-team All-American according to some sources, and one of the top running backs in the nation. Ibrahim already established himself as one of the best backs in school history, and he didn't have a whole lot more to prove. Yes, Minnesota went below 500, but most said if he was smart, he would leave for the NFL. He wound up deciding to come back for his senior campaign in his 5th year on campus. He was obviously listed as a starting running back going into their game against Ohio State. And while Vegas had the Buckeyes favored by over 2 touchdowns, I think a lot of people knew Minnesota would keep it close. Honestly, he kept them in the game, as on 4th down in a pivotal moment in that first half, Ibrahim had a huge electric run, and they ended up scoring a touchdown, and then the following possession, they would get an interception and score a second one. He was going off, and Ohio State had no answer for him at this point. He had 30 carries for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, and not only was he having a career night, but he was trying his best to lead them to an upset win. Unfortunately, in the 3rd quarter during a pivotal drive, he tried to juke an Ohio State defender, and that is when disaster struck. When you watch the video, you can obviously see something happen to his Achilles, and he immediately fell to the ground. He tried to get up with his own strength and walk off the field, but eventually he fell down near the sideline and had to be helped off by medical staff. He was later seen in a booth walking to the locker room, and from there Minnesota could not get enough stops, and they ended up losing by 2 scores. It was extremely unfortunate, as he was the best player on the field that night for both teams, and even Ohio State fans' hearts went out for him. He's near the top in a lot of Minnesota statistical categories, but I know he had his eyes set on breaking all of them. This is extremely unfortunate, and we don't know if he's going to play another snap for Minnesota. But the title of today's video was asking if his career was over, and in terms of the college football world, if I had to guess, I really think it is. Coach Fleck is an extremely smart guy, and he's already been in college for 5 years, and we know how much of a beating running backs take, and I think it would be best for him to just enter the NFL draft, and he obviously has a talent and work ethic, so I think he can make a name for himself in the league. What do you guys think, though? If you're a Minnesota fan, is Ibrahim the best running back in school history? Who's another player I should take a look at next? And will he be back this year? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. If you're a Minnesota fan, let me know what your thoughts are for this season, and another player I can take a look at next. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new here, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about what happened to Zach Annexstad. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.